Colin Melvin. I'm Chief Executive of Hermes Equity Ownership Services, also Advisory Council member at the Principles for Responsible Investment.
My name is Phil Walker. I've been in the consulting business for over 20 years. I currently run my own firm, but I've had the pleasure of working with some of the largest firms in the globe, including Dell, IBM, and I was COO of Capgemini.
I'm Elizabeth Uwaifo, and I'm the Managing Director of Radix Legal and Consulting Limited. I started my career helping companies, multinational companies, in corporate rescue and restructuring. And I then became one of the pioneers of the derivatives market in this legal sector in England. I've worked with many organizations, many large organizations, including Clifford Chance, UBS Limited, where I was director, and also a partner at Sidley Austin.
My name is Vanessa Vallely. I'm the Managing Director of WeAreTheCity, which is a website and organisation that helps to empower women in their careers. I'm also founder of an organisation called the Network of Networks, which was brought together to provide a not-for-profit forum for gender network leaders so that we could collaborate and share best practice. That forum now also has an LGBT chapter and a BAM chapter. From a corporate perspective, in the 25-year period that I worked for corporates, I've held positions such as Global Head of Governance, Global Head of Business Management, and Chief Operating Officer.
Mindful exclusion is identifying what works for you, bearing in mind the purpose you have in mind.
I think it's a great concept. I like even just the concept of exclusion versus inclusion, perhaps before getting to the mindful part.
I think it's a mindset of appreciating other people and asking questions and putting yourself out so that you have a better understanding of the people and the world around you.
In including, we are necessarily excluding. We're making choices, and we need to be mindful or aware of the impact of those choices. So I think that's a very interesting idea.
One of my early experiences was with Xerox. Xerox, an American company known for document management and known in the early days for copiers, one of the world's leading brands. Many years ago, I was in a sales meeting with a sales team, and my sales leader at the time was very explicit in terms of his belief that women could not be salespeople and black people could not be salespeople. He was very explicit about that and felt that we would fail miserably. And because it was a sales environment and because individuals were measured on their sales productivity, i.e. what they've delivered, I was able to succeed and move up the company because the numbers were the numbers were the numbers. The numbers didn't lie. And my numbers were better than anybody else's numbers. So by definition, I couldn't be ignored. I was certainly earning more than anybody else, and I was given promotion despite the reticence of my sales manager. Clearly, in other environments where perhaps the numbers are hidden, or perhaps your promotion is based on who you play golf with, then I couldn't have achieved what I achieved.
I think I may have felt myself being excluded mindlessly. I do remember being in a particular firm, and there was this huge client, and that was the biggest client for the firm, so everyone wanted to work for that client, because once you work for that client and you work for them well, then effectively you're made. And I used to be involved in the periphery of the client's work, so I'll do a lot of their documents behind the scenes, but I never got invited to the meetings. And I didn't take it very well. But I tried very hard to get in to the team meetings, and most times I was not invited. But on that basis, I left that firm.
The scenario that kind of springs to mind earlier on in my career was when I just had one of my children, and I'd gone back to work, very short period of maternity leave, and there was a big project that we was working on. There were lots of different meetings that were happening, but one of those meetings was at 7:30 in the morning, and the meeting series was set up and I wasn't invited. And I wasn't invited for the best possible reason, in the respect that the people that were running the meeting knew that I was a new mum, knew that I'd just returned to work, and they thought that They wouldn't invite me because they were doing me a favour, because I would have to get cover for the children and I didn't normally get into 8:30. However, when I found out this meeting was going on, I did feel slightly excluded, and I did raise it to them because really that should have been my decision as to whether or not I could make that meeting.
Mindless exclusion, I think, has existed for many years in the ways in which boards operate, and the way that, in particular, the way that boards are assembled and constructed. So the recruitment of new directors. We hear often from companies that they can't bring on different groups onto the board to improve the diversity of the board, because the city wouldn't understand or recognise the people that come on. Someone who's known in the city is a common refrain. But it seems to me often this is a bit of an excuse, that there's an exclusion here, a failure to include certain groups, just because it's the way things have been done.
From time to time I've had to pick myself up on my own mindless exclusion as well. I do recall a period of time when I was Chief Operating Officer at Capgemini, bumping into individuals from Mumbai, and my assumption was they were IT engineers. And I had one embarrassing conversation with a senior partner in Capgemini who was my equivalent, but I was talking to him as if he was an IT engineer, because my mental model was that if you were from Mumbai, you were an IT engineer that spent most of your time on the phone. And that was embarrassing for me, but it was also a big learning for me as well in terms of my assumption.
It's very easy, it's the quickest thing for us to do, to make an assumption that gives us the answer, you know, as opposed to actually asking or trying to learn about someone else. So I think that's, you know, don't make those quick assumptions, take time to find out more.
It's been a very good experience for me, because it's made me a lot more aware of team selection, and I try very hard not to miss out the way I feel that firm missed out on me. Mindless exclusion will be excluding talent mindlessly, not digging deeper to see whether the person you're looking at could be the game changer for your team. Mindless inclusion is including all simply because of some principle, and then neutralizing the quality of your team and making yourself less able to deliver and achieve your primary purpose for being in a corporation.
So you can go one or two ways. You can go up the positive inclusion, where you're inviting everyone for everything, and if you think about it from that respect, you'd never get anything done because you've got too many people. But the other way, again, you may not have the diversity in the room that you need. So I think it's a case of, you know, looking at the problem that you're trying to solve, and it's the best people for the job, surely, rather than kind of saying, oh, we want one of those or one of those or one of those. I'd hate to be one of those, personally.
Businesses need to organise in order to be successful. They need to focus on what they're best at. And that requires an element of exclusion. You can do that in a mindless or a mindful way. Doing it in a mindful way, you recognise in excluding how that has an impact on the system more broadly, and also then what you might need to do in the future to build connections again.
I was very fortunate to be one of the early employees in Dell in the UK. And Dell Computer Company is a well-known company set up by Michael Dell when he was 19. And I was one of the first employees in the UK. And the history of Dell has been well documented in various books and documentaries. What most people are not aware of are that particular moments Dell had some hard times in terms of a product that was launched that actually failed and put the company in some difficulty. I, with a group of other individuals, was running Dell UK at the time, and we had a cash flow crisis brought on by the failure of a particular product, and we had to do some radical things to turn the business around at the time. And one of the things we did was include everybody in the change, the crisis, to keep the company afloat. And that meant bringing people on board into the management team who had something to say, people on the front line. We had to decide who to involve in a process in terms of communicating across the entire organization. We had something which called prayer meetings every morning, where people from service delivery individuals to people working in the call center to the management team communicated to the whole company on a daily basis as we worked our way through what was a 45-day crisis. So we were quite clear in terms of the individuals that we wanted, if you like, on our, you could almost call it almost like an SAS team. They were special, they had particular skills and attributes, and they were personable and very articulate.
I think it's the ability to reflect on the way that you've reacted to something, or the assumptions that you've made, and then think about that and think there's some learning to be had there, or maybe I need to ask some more questions. So I think it's something that you would learn over a period of time.
Why this topic is so challenging is that we're all juggling numerous things. We're juggling the fast pace of technology. We're juggling all the issues that are obsessing us day to day in terms of making money, retaining people, getting new products online. And this is something else that is there to challenge us. And I suppose it's a question of what is the priority of the firm. And in the Dell example, we had to question the fundamentals of our business, or we would go broke. And there are lots of examples of companies that have never questioned the fundamentals of their business and they've gone broke. Kodak would be an example, Woolworths would be an example, HMV would be an example. The CEOs of those firms did not wake up in the morning and think, let me put my business out of business today. But they have the fundamental challenges to their business, both in terms of disruptors to their business model, were there for many, many people to see. The fact they never questioned it is a bit of a worry.
What I find exciting about mindful exclusion potentially as a movement is that it describes something which we need to understand properly in order to build strong connections within and between businesses. So in understanding that in including we are excluding, and that if we exclude in a mindless way, we may be failing to build connections and to recognize interdependence. If we do it in a mindful way, then we can do that.
Well, I think we're just at the beginning of this particular journey. We're just beginning to understand that sometimes the way we look at the world, by definition, because of our background and because of where and with whom we were born, it frames our view of the world. And I think it takes real discipline to step back a little bit and to say, are we viewing the world in a particular way? And is that positive or negative? And if you're running a firm, are you really leveraging the full capability and assets of your people?
In some ways, it's impossible not to go on a leadership journey of sorts. I think we all, as leaders, need to do this. Doing it with the Centre for Synchronous Leadership, the process is challenging and rewarding and very interesting. It's one where you learn a lot about yourself and learn how to apply the things that you've learned about yourself to your role as leader. Finding the courage to be yourself as leader and recognizing that in doing so you'll further inspire others to bring something of themselves to their jobs.